Hi folks, got a new message for you today, and this one has really been very difficult for me to put it together. It's kind of complicated, and I hope I don't lose you on this, but it's talking about regrets. And I know a lot of us, we've had regrets in our lives. Some of them may have been major regrets and some of them little minor regrets. But anyway, it's something to consider, and this word here I'm bringing today that I want to talk to you about is about the regrets. And as I pondered on this here, I found in my thoughts that some of the regrets that I had, I wondered if I hadn't done them at all, would I have regretted them? And then I thought about if I hadn't, if I did regret the things that I had done, what would it have been like if I hadn't done them at all? Would I have regretted not doing them? It's kind of a complicated thing to think about when you're thinking about regrets. Sometimes it seems like what we think is really bad isn't really that bad at all. Or is it? So how do we figure on our regrets? So we should have never done this, but we have regretted that we didn't do it. You know, hindsight, they say, is 20/20. But the only way to figure out whether you regret is a real hard lesson that you learned from the regret is to weigh it out and to see which way it turns out. You know, some circumstances change things. It can be a regret on this hand and not a regret on this hand. To say, well, I'm really glad I did that thing because of the way it turned out, because of the circumstances. Some events are forgotten, you know, as in our regrets, we may have thought of them as being minor, and we regretted the little minor things. And in some of the major things, due to circumstances and people, we see that the only way to figure out whether we really and truly regretted was to weigh out the circumstances. And I want to tell you one of the circumstances, you know, like I said, there was minor circumstances and regrets and major regrets in our lives. You know, some of us may have never had a major regret, but I know that we're human, so we most probably all had minor regrets for sure. All right, so let me tell you an example right here of one of the regrets I had. I had an uncle, we wasn't really very tight, but you know, he showed me some things that we talked sometimes. And you know, I loved him. You know, I loved him. He was kind of a cool dude. He went in the military and did things in the military that he didn't even want to talk about during war. You know, and he didn't want to come up and admit to any kind of regrets that was in his life. But anyway, in the story, my brother had died, and I went to the funeral, and my uncle was there. And we were sitting in the kitchen and chatting, you know, and I had been off on the road playing music, And they kind of, I'm from a real small town. They kind of looked at me as like, oh, he's a big musician. He's out making a living playing music and traveling all over the United States. And it was a big deal to a little country town like Peckerville, where I come from, and my family, thought of it as a big deal, and my uncle was one of them. So we sitting down chatting, drinking coffee at the funeral home, and he asked me how I was doing with my music career. And I told him, I said, well, Uncle, I said, I'll tell you the truth. I said, I really stepped out and went into a good direction. He said, I'm really doing good with my music right now. He said, well, tell me about it. I said, I'm playing music in church now. He said, what? I said, yeah. I said, I'm playing music in church now. I said, I give up all the worldly music and I start serving the Lord, and now I'm singing for the Lord. Well, he bust out laughing. Oh, I mean, really thought that was really funny, man. I mean, it really kind of hurt my heart, like, my God, I thought you'd be happy for me because I went. And he said, man, you had a good career. You crazy doing something like that? And he said, this is hysterical. He said, I can't believe you did that. And I said, yeah. I said, that's what I was quickened in my heart. The Lord led me in that direction, and now I'm playing music in churches, and I thought it was a great thing. Well, he laughed, so I never forgot that laugh about that, how he responded to that. So anyway, time passes, and a couple of years down the road, I get a phone call from my mom, and she says, listen, your uncle's real sick. He's got kidney disease, and the doctors say he won't last 3 days. So she said, if you want to go see him, she says the date had already passed. He only has 2 days left, according to what the doctors are saying. You need to go see him now. Well, I was a new Christian, and really never gave any thoughts to regrets in my life. So I said, well, let me go see him. So I had this little spirit-filled Bible, and I looked up the sinner's prayer in it, and I was going to go and tell him about Jesus and give him the sinner's prayer so that he could have salvation and make it into heaven. So anyway, it's quite a ways of a drive from where I was to the hospital where he was. It took me about an hour and 50 minutes, almost 2 hours, to get to him. And the whole way I was driving there, I was just weeping and crying because my uncle was dying, and I had to bring him the Word of God, and I had to be able to reach him in seriousness, and so that he could have salvation on his life. Just weeping the whole way. I mean, I just cried and cried and cried about it. And when I finally got there, I walked into his where they had him at, and it was freezing in there. I mean, it was ice cold. He had a little T-shirt type of thing on, and just covered with a little sheet, and it was freezing. He didn't have no socks. He asked me, he said, man, can you get my socks? He said, my feet are freezing. Well, I thought it was kind of funny. This man, they said 3 days he's dying. I mean, we chatting like there ain't nothing wrong with him, except that it was cold in the room, And they had him laying on like would look like just an operating type of table, and he was just sitting there, almost propped up on his arm, and really didn't even look like he was sick at all. So we talked for a little while, and then I asked him. I said, Uncle Lloyd, I said, how you doing? I said, did you see a priest? And he said, yeah. He said, they came by and they give me the last sacraments. But I was like, wow, this is so casual and so laid back, and I was really kind of freaked out about how he didn't even look like he was sick. And I said, well, Uncle Lloyd, I said, I come here, want to bring Jesus to you, and then when I did that, I saw a little smile on his face, and boop, reminded me of when we was at the funeral home, and he was laughing at me when I told him I was playing music for the Lord. So it swayed me so bad that I didn't say the sinner's prayer with him. I didn't say anything more about Jesus. All I said was, did the priest come? And and he said, yeah. And they give me the last sacraments, and that was it. I was shocked at my weakness and my inability to be able to overcome somebody laughing at me, my uncle laughing at me, and then let him slip away. Now, I'm not saying he didn't make it into heaven. I'm saying I was very frustrated and regretted big time that I didn't man up and be able to reach him and talk to him about the Lord and introduce him into salvation. I was most probably one of the greatest regrets of my life. Okay. So I'm saying all of that because I want you to think. I want you to think about the things in your life that have brought you to regrets. Stay tuned just a minute, and I'm going to be right back. We're going to go on with another story. Okay? God bless you. Okay, I'm back. We're talking about regrets here. And another example of regrets, other than my uncle, which was a very, like I said earlier, very deep and sad regret on my part, that I just wasn't man enough to be able to bring forth God. I just wasn't prepared spiritually, and just was new. I was new as a Christian and didn't quite know how to handle it, didn't premeditate and pray enough to be prepared to face that situation. Anyway, there was another example. It was like with my dad. My dad had an old 58 Chevrolet. I just loved it. And, every chance I would get, I would go take it for a joyride. And, I thought of that. I said, well, it's not a very big regret right there. But my daddy was like such a wonderful man. It was a shame that I was even taking his car for a little ride. I'd bring it back, but it was the idea that he didn't deserve for me to be doing that. Little minor regret right there. But nevertheless, I still regretted it. Regrets teach us things. Teach us about life. Gives us lessons that we need to put in our hearts, and so that we just don't do that ever again. And if the opportunity comes up for us to do something that we figure would be a regret, we know how to handle it now because we've seen this regret and we've understand. And what it does, your regrets wake up your consciousness. So your conscience will start to tell you, oh, don't do that. You're going to regret that moment. Don't do that. And then it gives you a moment of time to think. The point being, when you doing natural regrets with your family and just regular life situations and circumstances mean a lot here. Okay, so anyway, but this point I'm trying to say right now is that this regret of doing something against the Lord. Now, we know that when we sin, we deserve judgment. Now, that right there is a regret that we should realize that that's a big regret. Okay? That's not a little minor regret. That's a big regret when we sin against God. And even though, we got to know that there's going to be consequences for our regrets. A lot of us think that God's just going to look over us. No, he's not a respecter of anybody. He's not going to let you slide just because you are who you think you are. Judgments will be passed upon you and for your sins. And then there will be regret. And of course, I know you're thinking to yourself, well, surely there's forgiveness. God is going to forgive. Yes, and he will. But that doesn't stop the repercussions from your sin. In other words, you're going to have repercussions for your sins. In other words, you're going to get a judgment call. I don't know what the judgment call is going to be, but whatever the sin, it will apply to whatever the sin is, okay? So, but unless God has a reason to let you, for his purpose, to let you go by on this particular sin that you've done, and you have not regretted or don't even feel like it is a regret in your life or in your spirit. And for God's reason, whatever his reason may be, that you get to slide by. But let me say this. David was a man after God's own heart, and he didn't let him slide by. I mean, Nathan came to David, and David confessed to him, and he said, I've sinned against the Lord, and he begged and begged. Oh, God, he begged for forgiveness. And God forgave him. But nevertheless, his sin came to judgment. And Bathsheba, his wife, their baby died. And David fasted and begged and asked the Lord to let this pass on him, and it didn't happen. The child died, and that judgment stood. So, God's not a respecter of persons, and whatever we do, we're not going to slide. If David couldn't slide, we surely can't slide either. Okay, so now another regret I'm reminded of was Judas. Ooh, was that ever a big regret? He discovered that the consequences for his sin could not be changed. He came to that realization right quick, and that when he decided he was going to betray Jesus, it could not be taken back. Wow, what regret and guilt he must have had. He failed to trust in following Jesus wholeheartedly. Why? I have no idea why, and I don't think anywhere's in the Word why he betrayed Jesus. It was in his conscience, and it was a decision that he made it, and it caused Jesus to be led to the execution, and for that decision, his spiritual friend and teacher was killed, and instead of going confess to God and for forgiveness, he went to man, and of course man couldn't do anything about it, and such a regret, it just ate him up, it overwhelmed him, and finally he hung himself. So now as believers, we have to understand that Christ is there for us. Jesus always forgives and gives a second chance. And remember that he does. So I've got one more story I want to tell you, and this one's complicated. it will take you to a place where you have to remember that Jesus was there. And this is a situation that happens most probably a lot of times, not necessarily like what I'm fixing to tell you, because what I'm fixing to tell you was a dream that I had. Okay, and in this dream, there was some severe regrets, and but we have to remember that Jesus was there all during this dream. Okay, so anyway, this dream takes place back in most probably the 1870s, something like that. And this crew of people were traveling by ship across the ocean going to Australia. And this is not the story of the Titanic, but there was 90 people on board the ship, plus the crew. And in the dream, I was the first mate. I wasn't the captain. So we going along. Everything's going good, and we just sailing along. And we must probably getting close to the halfway mark there. Okay, back in those days, ships didn't travel that fast, and you know, across the Pacific Ocean, all the way to Australia is a long ride, especially for a ship of that caliber and the speeds that they traveled back in those days, which wasn't very fast. But anyway, we were traveling along, and one night, this lady comes into the wheelhouse with me and the captain. We're in there drinking coffee and talking. It's about midnight at night, and she's frantic. She's, oh my gosh, my little boy's sick. He says, he's burning up with fever. She says, I just don't know what to do. She says, they told me to come see the doctor. So anyway, we call for the doctor. The doctor comes into the quarters of the captain where we placed the little boy. And the doctor says, he says, ma'am, you're going to have to step out while I examine him. And she was all frantic and said, oh no, she's going into hysterics. Oh, crying, oh my God, my baby, what's going on with my baby? Anyway, she's frantic and all upset about her baby. So the captain, the doctor says, can you please leave the room? He says, I need to concentrate and I need to do some tests on this boy because he is very sick. So he went checking his fever. His fever was like 104, on his way to 105. And he checked him out, and I guess most probably about an hour later, he comes out and he says, I'll have to talk to the captain in private. Well, she went into hysterics again, you know, and so we had to remove her from the quarters of the captain and the wheelhouse. And she went down below and got with the people over there and was saying that something was seriously wrong with her child, and that the captain and the doctor wasn't telling her what was going on. So the doctor comes up to the captain and he tells the captain, he said, listen, that boy's got a plague. He said, and it's airborne. He said, and it's the kind of plague that within 18 hours, if we don't do something with this child, some kind of way we can isolate him off of this ship, he says, it'll kill everybody. She said, and he says, the little boy, 4 years old, he's doomed. He says, there's nothing I can do for him. Even if we had a hospital at our disposal, there's nothing that they could do for him. They would have to quarantine him in some kind of sealed atmosphere, which we can't do that on this ship. And the clock's ticking, and he said there's no time to waste before this contaminates everyone on the ship. He says, including myself. You know, he says, everybody that the boy has been around is already contaminated, not yet sealed with the the virus or whatever this is that has going to kill this little boy. He said, so we must take action. So the doctor walks out of the room, and he goes downstairs, and down to the lower end of the boat, and he starts having to deal with the people, and the people are all on his tail because of what he's saying to them. And so the captain and I, we're sitting behind that, and we said, oh man, we're in a heck of a predicament here, what we're going to do. So he says, look here, he says, I don't know what to do or say about this situation. He says, there's nothing I can think of that we can do. And I'm like, well, there's only one solution, and that is we don't have a little boat that we could put him on in these kind of seas that he would survive in a little boat, pulling behind the boat, the waves that will consume our little skiffs in this kind of weather. And I don't look like the weather's going to change while we are sailing, And so we said, well, what can we do? So the only solution that I could see as the first mate, or as just anybody with any kind of sense, I says, we got to throw him overboard. And the captain said, are you crazy? We can't throw that kid overboard. Have you lost your mind? He said, they'll shoot us. They'll hang us, man. There's no way we can do that. And I'm like, hey, what are we going to do? All die? Or for the sake of one? I said, granted, he's a little boy, and, I'll go and I guess I'll have to do it. If you won't do it, he said, oh no, he said, I won't have no part with this. So I said, well, okay. I said, somebody has to do it. I said, all 90 of us will perish. Should we say, let's throw all 90 overboard and let the ship sail on without nobody running it and see if the boy will survive? No, he can't run this ship by himself, and he will not survive anyway. So, what kind of sense is that? Throw the 90 overboard for the sake of one? No. The logical thing for us to do was throw him overboard. And then that would save the rest of us, and while we still have time. So the captain says, I'll have no part in this. I'll have no part. He says, that's murder. He says, I can't do it. I said, yeah, but this is certain circumstances here that we can't overcome. What would you have me to do? You have a solution? And he says, no, I have no solution. And he said, we don't have time to come up with something, that would suffice here out in the open sea. We don't have no communications. There's no helicopters or anything that can come get the boy and carry him off to safety within a 18-hour period. We are days and days away from reaching land again, So he says, man, there's no way. We'll all perish. So I said, well, look, I'm going to do this. I said, but I'm going to make sure and pray with the little boy and tell him about Jesus and say, let him understand that Jesus is going to take care of him and everything's going to be all right. Say the sinner's prayer with him and Lord God, touch him, even though he wasn't of any age of accountability or anything like that, but still wanted to make sure that I'd done everything that I could do spiritually to let the little boy know so that he will make it into God's kingdom and in heaven. And I told him how wonderful heaven is and how he's going to see all his folks again and how everything's going to be good, even though you're real sick and you're gonna die. You're really not going to be able to make it from this disease you have. You see how bad you're feeling now is just moments away. You won't be able to survive this. So I did the very best that I could, telling him, about this. This is the circumstances that we are stuck with right here. So I was just getting ready to push him overboard. Okay, I took him to the back of the ship, and there was a big window, and I set him on the windowsill in the back of the ship, and the ship was kind of rusty and stuff like that. I couldn't close the door to this little room that I had put him in to push him overboard. You know, I couldn't close the door all the way, so it had a little crack. Well, right when I was getting ready to push him, after I had talked to him for most probably 2 hours, getting ready to push him overboard, I heard a noise, and I turned my head like this, and then just as I turned my head, I could see just a reflection of somebody pulling their head back like this here. So I said, oh, well, somebody was looking in. So right when I turned back to go push him overboard, I turned to go push him, and poof, he was gone. I didn't see him. He was gone. He either jumped out the window, or the Lord might have taken him out there. You know, because I had prayed that he would, you know, Lord, make a way for this cup to pass me, you know, because I really didn't want to push the boy, but I had no thought in my mind other than saving the 90 on the ship, you know, that would be contaminated. So I went back to the captain, and I told the captain, I said, it's done. He said, you really did push that boy overboard? I said, no, I didn't. I said, I just want to let you know, I didn't push him overboard. I said, I turned my head, I heard a noise, I turned my head, and when I looked back, he must have jumped out the window. I said, that's it, that's all I could think of, either that or God took him. You know, I didn't see what happened to him, all I knew that he was gone. And I said, so this is what I'm saying, and the captain says, man, he said, they're gonna blame us for that, and they're gonna hang us. He said, if we live to make it to shore, it's going to be something. So sure enough, we sailed for most probably 5 or 6 more days, and we finally got to shore. And when we got to shore, everybody on the ship was frantic. That lady done stirred up, I mean, a beehive of trouble on the ship for us, and there was no getting by with this thing. The people on the ship come and grab us after we had docked. Excuse me, and took us on land to the nearest tree, threw over 2 ropes, and was just fixing to hang us both when we were saying, I didn't push him. The captain said, I didn't have nothing to do with this. And they're saying, well, you the captain, you in control of this ship, you had something to do with it. You could have stopped him. And I said, I didn't do it. So they put the ropes around our necks and was getting ready to hoist us up by the neck. And this old lady hollers, wait a minute. They didn't do it. She said, I was looking through the door. She says, and I saw him when he turned around and looked back, the little boy was gone. He jumped. He jumped overboard. He didn't push him. He jumped. So they didn't hang us. You see, so things are not always what they seem to be. And then the bottom line of this story is, like I was saying earlier, there was Jesus all the time, protecting me from me making a mistake that whether or not it was a sin for me to push that little boy overboard to protect the others with the circumstances the way they were, whether it was sin or not, Jesus protected me from having that sin. Jesus was there. There was Jesus. In the midst of my trial, in the midst of your trial, in circumstances. And circumstances make a difference. And God knows these circumstances. And He will forgive us and protect us and give us the second chance. The benefits of knowing Jesus are wonderful. Are wonderful.
Hey folks, stay with us as we go into a little bit of worship music with Ron. God bless.
Every time I try to make it on my own, every time I try to stand start to fall. All those lonely roads I've traveled on my own. There was Jesus. When the life I led came crashing to the ground. When the friends I had were nowhere to be found. I couldn't see it then, but I can see it now. There was Jesus. In the waiting and the searching, the healing and the hurting, like a blessing buried in the broken pieces. Every minute, every moment, everywhere I've been and going, even though I didn't know it, I couldn't see it, there was Jesus. There was Jesus. For a man who needs amazing kind of grace, for forgiveness at a price I could not pay. I'm not perfect, so I thank God every day. There was Jesus. There was Jesus. In the waiting and the searching, the healing and the hurting, like a blessing buried in the broken pieces. Every minute, every moment, everywhere I've been and going, even though I didn't know it or couldn't see it, there was Jesus. There was Jesus. Listen now. For a man who needs amazing kind of grace, for forgiveness at a price I could not pay. I'm not perfect, so I thank God every day. There was Jesus. There was Jesus. There was Jesus. Yes, there was Jesus. Thank you, Lord, for always being there.